Hey, this is Blair Kirkhoff, host of Sports BKC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. We're switching things up today, and I'm pretty stoked about it. Join me in listening to Mellinger MInutes for your ears. It's a subscriber-exclusive podcast. Star columnist Sam Mellinger and producer Savanna Smith started this weekly venture in late March, and it's been terrific. Sam's gotten great guests, and he answers questions submitted by readers left on voicemail. Hey, add this number to your contact list, 816-234-4365. That's how you leave a question for Sam. And you can find this podcast at kansascity.com/Mellinger Podcast. That's kansascity.com/Mellinger Podcast. So Sam, take it away.
Hey guys, Sam Mellinger here with another episode of Mellinger Minutes for your ears. Thanks to everybody who's been listening along the last month or two, and thanks to everyone finding us and giving us a shot for the first time. Baseball's on my mind. You probably saw where the owners are delivering a proposal to the players this week about how games can be held. And if you want to get in the weeds about the safety protocols, it's really interesting and pretty extensive. I wrote a column that should be on the website now. I hope you check it out, but not as much as I hope the owners and players don't screw this whole thing up. But anyway, just the talk of these games coming back means my thoughts are sort of hijacked. You know, I miss baseball desperately, and not just because it's a major part of my job. I mean, I miss it for a million reasons, and the more that I was thinking about that today, I just thought I'd list 10 here. The caveat is that I'm narrowing the list down to what we'd have if games were played without fans, right? So this means, some stuff that's specific to being at a ballpark can't be on the list, like the tater tot nachos at Kauffman Stadium, or, just dumping peanut shells on the ground, or, I've always thought, like, when you're watching a baseball game, you have conversations that you would never have anywhere but a ballpark. I really miss that part, and that's not just for me, like, with my weird job, like the first time that I hear Rusty Kuntz say, "What up, player?" I always know that it's baseball season, and that won't come for a while. But, the list here is just stuff that we can see when games come back on TV without fans. Okay, Ryan and Hud and Joel. I know I can't see this entirely objectively. I consider all those guys friends, but I do believe they do a good job and an honest job on the broadcast. And, I'm looking forward to the first time Hud screws something up and feels terrible about it, and then Ryan rubs it in. Those are the best. Mondesi's talent. He's going to be 25 in July, so he's not old by any stretch, but he is past the point where youth can be an excuse. And this is interesting, and it's been on my mind. He's getting into his arbitration years, and I've heard some in the game mention that once the money starts getting real, you see some guys alter their approach and sort of grow up. And, Mondesi has the talent to be one of the best players the Royals have ever had, but it's got to turn into consistent production. I think it can happen this year. Okay, Sal Perez playing again. Here, look, this part is going to be an unpopular take, but I think Sal was severely underrated early in his career. And at some point, he kind of became overrated, at least locally, and looked like he's a very good catcher. Like, don't get me wrong, but he struggles getting on base, is not what you'd love as far as like game calling. The framing numbers are consistently bad. But look, all that said, he is an absolute joy to watch. He has this sort of like relentless optimism that he brings to every plate appearance, and, the energy behind the plate. I'm looking forward to seeing that again. Jake Junis' slider, maybe you would choose Josh Stummont's fastball, but, I think Junis' slider might be the single best pitch on the Royals roster. It's always been interesting to me that he'd never thrown that pitch until I think it was Double-A. But if I'm off on that, it's still, the point is, the single biggest reason that Jake Junis has a chance to be a good starter was not on the Royals' radar when they gave him, $600,000 to buy him out of a basketball scholarship in high school. So I'm also looking forward to the cameos from the opponent. I adore Francisco Lindor. I want to see more of the White Sox young core. The Twins have some young arms that are interesting. A better look at the National League Central if they do, the schedule, sort of weighted that way. Christian Yelich is one of the game's best players. Javi Baez is a fun watch. Joey Votto, he's getting older, had a bad year last year, but he's still one of those rare guys, that like every single opponent respects and looks up to. Whit Merrifield, Look, I'll admit it. In the beginning, I wondered if he was sort of a short-term flameout, kind of a fluke, a little like Bob Hamlin-ish, if you will. Because, when he got called up, he did not have near the pedigree of some of those Royals past stars. But, holy crap. I mean, he is just so consistent, so tough. He's on a path that's going to put him in the Royals Hall of Fame someday. I also am looking forward to like the crazy stuff that you can't imagine happening. I don't know how many of you guys have been reading along. Jason Stark has been doing a really interesting series on this kind of thing in The Athletic. He had like the time someone hit a home run but didn't score a run, the time someone stole first base. I remember as a kid, the first time I saw one of those hard grounders up the middle get stuck in a pitcher's glove, like in the webbing, and he just throws the whole thing over to the first baseman. Like I know now that kind of thing happens every once in a while, but no sport, it seems like, breaks up the spaces of stillness with bursts of incredible, quite like baseball does. Can't wait for that. Alex Gordon's footprints outside the on-deck circle. And, I don't literally mean like I want to see like these shoe-shaped patches of dead grass, but what I mean is like just all the subtle familiarities, right? Like I hope they still play the walk-up songs. I hope we can still hear Mike McCarthy's voice in the background. I hope we can still see Gordon like subtly roll his eyes but not say a word on a bad strike call or, blow a bubble while he's making a diving catch, those kinds of things. Jorge Soler, he is my kindergartner's favorite player. Because when we splurged for good tickets once last year, he hit one. You remember where that truck was, in left field? He hit one like damn near there. It was pretty remarkable. And the kids, like, look, the names, Singer, Kowar, Lynch, on and on. The Royals had always targeted this to be the year those guys would debut in Kansas City. And, it's the middle of May. This is the time of the season that those decisions might start to be made. But, the timelines are different now, obviously, like everything's different. But, with minor league baseball, washed out, you'd expect to see these guys up sooner than later. Okay, guys, that's 10. I'm also curious about what you're looking forward to. I know I missed some because I changed my mind on this a few times during the day. So I'm curious what you guys are looking forward to when baseball comes back. Let me know. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and then get back with your questions.
Hi, Sam. This is Charles calling in from Roland Park. Just wanted to see if we could get an official statement on where you stand with Arby's Fishgate. It's been tearing my family apart. All right, thanks. Bye.
Charles, thank you from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity to answer this question and clear up any misconceptions that some of you might have. I know that there have been some lies, some slander thrown my way from the mainstream media to try and portray me as a Arby's fish eater. I just want you to know that nothing could be further from the truth. I haven't eaten Arby's in many years after I heard an urban legend that turned out to not be true, but I can't get past it and will never go back, even as much as I love their curly fries and their apple turnovers. I'm not against fast food. I want you to know that. I will stand for the number 11 from Wendy's. It's delicious. You should try it. Anything from Taco John's, Winstead's, Good Sense, Quick Trip, if that counts as fast food. You know what? It's kind of all fast food right now, right? Curbside delivery. Although a lot of restaurants seem to screw up curbside orders, but that's okay. We're all trying. But again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to clear this up. I am not an Arby's fish eater. Never have been, never will be. Do not believe the lies from the mainstream media. Thank you. Let's talk about the Chiefs.
Sam, hi. My name is Brian. I'm calling from Columbia, Missouri. My question is, they had the replay of the Super Bowl on TV a couple weeks ago, and what I took away from it was that the 49ers seemed really confident, and they were, there was one time I think where Williams ran for an 11-yard gain, and the San Francisco 49ers D-back had to make the tackle. And he was, celebrating as if he was just given the MVP of the game. And I felt like that, the Chiefs kind of were a reflection of Andy Reid's personality, and they stayed composed. The 49ers put a lot of, not just the big pose at the end there with the picture before the game was over with, but throughout the entire game. And so my question is, did you get that same sense, and did you feel like that somehow they kind of had this entitled attitude? And furthermore, do you think that it was made the victory for the Chiefs even better? Because I personally do. I enjoyed watching them celebrate throughout the game as if they knew the outcome was inevitable. And eventually the Chiefs came out on top, and it was just, I thought it put a nice little, icing on the cake, so to speak. So anyhow, I was just wondering if you got the same sense of, that the 49ers really seem to be kind of poor sportsmen, basically, and they kind of deserve to lose. Anyhow, thanks.
Well, yeah, Brian, the 49ers were definitely cocky. And that scene that you talk about, that you reference, of like the entire team, it seemed like posing in the end zone with like 10 or 11 minutes left, like it's a magazine shoot. That's going to live forever, right? Like nothing gets on the internet and just goes away. And they're going to have to live with that. I do think, however, that if you're going to be turned off by cocky teams or teams that celebrate, I'm not sure that you can throw stones from Chiefs Kingdom, as it were. I think the Chiefs are one of the celebratingest, cockiest teams out there. And, obviously for good reason, they won the Super Bowl. But, you don't think that there's guys on the other side that, every time Mahomes flexes his arms or, every time Tyreek Hill does the deuces, every time Travis Kelce does just about anything, Tyrann Mathieu points at his head. There's a lot of celebration that, borders, if not lives in arrogance on the Chiefs side. I love it. I want to be clear, like this is not any sort of criticism. I love it. I think that it's part of what makes sports fun. You've probably heard me say I think baseball needs a hell of a lot more of it, maybe now more than ever. But it's just, I get what you're saying, celebrating too early, and again, that magazine pose in the end zone was probably a bridge too far or whatever. But, everybody celebrates. Every team that lost a game in the NFL last year had some moment of celebration. So I don't think that's a big deal, particularly for the players. But I certainly get why Chiefs fans, may even have that picture of the 49ers. I can't get that out of my head. Just print that out and put it above your fireplace or above the bar in your basement or whatever, because that is pretty classic.
Hey, Sam. Calling because you're looking for help with your Mellinger minutes. My name is Mike, and I'm curious, do you think that Patrick Mahomes can take on that Michael Jordan killer mentality and still remain a likable and affable quarterback in the NFL? Or do you think that you have to have that killer mentality to be as successful as MJ was or as Brady was? That's all I got, buddy. I'm going to clock out now from doing your job. Take care. Love your stuff. See you later.
Mike, thank you. You put in a fine day's work as far as I'm concerned, so you're free to go. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, a lot of the sort of biggest winners in professional sports that we've seen have, developed this reputation, and most of it's earned, of just kind of being assholes. And I hope I can say that word on this podcast. But I don't know that that's a requirement. You know what I mean? Like, I do believe that a lot of people in sports and otherwise as well, can be driven or benefit from personality traits that you would not want in your friend or your brother or your son or your daughter. And sometimes those things can be positive. And I think we're seeing that in the last dance of, Jordan. It may not be the way that you wanted to be led, but, there was a method to the madness, I guess. He got results, he did win, and that's what he was about. But I don't think that's a requirement. And I'd go a step further and say that if that's not in your natural way, if that's not who you are, then trying to be that is a lie. And I think that people are going to see through that. And so that to me is not Patrick. He's got an edge to him for sure. And he's not afraid to yell at guys. He's not afraid to get in them. And that's only going to grow. as he gets older, because he's still younger than most of these guys. So when he's, 28, 29, 32, 33, I mean, it's going to be a different way about him. I think we should expect that. But, there's more than one way to lead, I guess is what I'm saying. And Patrick seems to be with enthusiasm. It seems to be, helping everybody along rather than dragging them along. It seems to be in believing in them and being a cheerleader for them. It seems to be in showing them that he's willing to do all the work and more that he's asking them to do. And as much as anything, honestly, it seems to be just like they all see his talent and they all know something different is possible. I keep going back to that, the Texans game in the playoffs. I mean, down 3 touchdowns, I think that there's teams in the past with the Chiefs that they're going to pack it in then. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to insult anybody that was on those teams, but, they know that they can't come back from that. But I think those guys now, they look around, we've got Patrick Mahomes, like we can do this. We've got this. And I think that is a really valuable trait as well. So, look, like I understand what you're saying, that he doesn't seem to have sort of that Jordan hole in him. But I don't think that that's the only way that you have to do it. Magic Johnson won a lot of games. You know what I mean? I don't think that there's only one way to do it. And I think, Patrick, at least so far, is showing that his way works as well.
Cain at first, 2-1 pitch. Slice foul. This one finds the upper deck. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Pressure on Toronto. They are down to their last 3 outs in a tie game. They lose, the season is over. Royals have a game in hand. Lined right field toward the corner. Fair ball. Cain around second. On his way to third. He's going to try to score. Here he comes. Throw not in time. Hosmer lined it into right field toward the corner. Bautista went over to dig it out. But Cain from first base scoring all the way. Hosmer ends up at first base. And this place is vibrating.
That was the call from Denny Matthews, one of the most important and exciting plays in Royals franchise history. Caught up recently with the third base coach on that play, one of the men who absolutely needed to be there to make it possible, Mike Jirschele. The conversation has been edited for brevity and clarity, and it's always good to hear Jirschele's voice. I hope I get to hear it, at a baseball stadium soon. So anyway, I hope you enjoy the talk. Thanks.
I appreciate your time. And
no problem.
First, how are you doing through all this? I know you stay
good.
busy in the off season anyway, but yeah, what are you up to?
Well, right now I'm out in my yard cleaning up the flower bed and stuff, which I never do usually.
Right.
And just been working around the yard a lot and working at the furniture store a little bit, just trying to keep busy.
Have you been watching these games?
No, I haven't been able to watch them.
Yeah. You might not even get Fox Kansas City where you are.
Not Kansas City, no.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been fun. I'm sure you're getting like texts and stuff like that, but was the play that stands out is one that we've talked about before, and I know you talked about, but do you think of that play often? You know what I mean? Does it come to your head very often, or is it just kind of another one little part of a magic ride?
I don't know. I think about it once in a while. When you start thinking about the 6 years I spent up there, and that what I would have to say is one of the highlights of my, time of being up there. Especially in the situation that it happened, and it wasn't just we were up by 5 or down by 5 and you did that. It's, it was a tie ball game and the game was on the line and, and everything worked out like we thought it would probably work out. So,
I mean, it was such a wild play, and I think I know you well enough to know that you don't think about it in these terms, but that is as much of an impact as a third base coach can have. I mean, it's like in that situation with those stakes, the prep work that you did to figure that out, the communication with all the guys. I mean, they just had to fill you with so much pride.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes you get lucky, Sam.
Yeah, right.
But no, yeah, I mean, it does. It makes you feel good when it works. If I'd have got him thrown out at home, it would have been a different story. And that's the one thing to me that I've always loved about, being a third base coach is, you can be a big part of that game, making decisions like that, when to take a chance, when not to, and, just weighing all your options that you have and knowing that, like as soon as Haas hit that ball, I knew I had Cain at first base, so I knew I had speed. If you remember, I think it was the night before or 2 nights before that, we had the same type ball hit, but I had Morales coming into third base and I couldn't send him,
Sure.
And I mean, just remembering that, putting that in your mind and keeping it in the back burner there that, hey, if this happens, we got a shot if the guy can run from first. And as soon as that ball was hit, that's the first thing that popped to my mind was, hey, this could be the play right here, where you could end up scoring, Lorenzo, as long as he keeps running. And I give him all the credit in the world right there because he got a good jump, good read, and he was coming in full speed. So
yeah,
he gave me the opportunity to go ahead and send him.
Yeah. Can you walk me through, like, how you guys got the intel that the way that Batista played those balls would give you the chance, and sort of how you communicated that to the guys?
Well, I'm pretty sure, and I can't even remember for sure, Sam, but I think it was brought up in our advanced meetings with the advanced scouts that he will try to throw guys out at second base, on balls down the line. But as a third base coach, I didn't even really need to know that because that's exactly what I'm looking for. If I see him come up, spin, and make a throw to second where there's no cutoff guy, it's going all the way in the second base, you have the opportunity to score that guy depending on who's coming in the third right there. But it helps to have that in your mind that, hey, this guy will do it, Because sometimes you get caught and a guy never does it, and all of a sudden he does do it, and you go, oh, shoot, I held him too quick, or things like that. So, but knowing that, he will, and I saw him, before that, spin and throw it all the way to second base. If you look at that play, Goings was in the right spot. If he comes up and just hits Goings, I can't send him, because he would have been out by a mile, but...
Yeah, there's a great replay on MLB.com that has kind of all the angles. And it looks like Cain was about halfway, maybe a little bit more than halfway between second and third when Batista threw it. I mean, this is a weird thing because he's scoring from first without running on the pitch. But that's an easy call for you at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, to me, it was... I don't know. I felt it was a no-brainer. We're going for it right here, even though there was nobody out. But I just felt there's no way Tulowitzki's going to catch that ball, spin, and throw Cain out at home plate in that situation.
Yeah, it really wasn't that close. I mean, Cain slid, obviously, and I always think of that, after he slid and he kind of jumped up and he's punching the air. That was the cover of the next Sports Illustrated. I always think of that.
Yeah.
But when you're talking to guys about scoring from first on a single, were they thinking like, oh hell yeah, let's do this, or was it like, you're crazy, this isn't going to work? What was their reaction?
I think in Cain's mind right away there, he said, I'm busting it because there's a chance up. Bautista bobbles that ball or drops it, picks it up and drops it or whatever, he knew he had a chance to score, you know. And,
right.
And that's the main thing you really try to instill in these guys, is their mind is that you just keep busting it and then let us make the decision on whether you're going to go or not.
Yeah, and that group in particular, you didn't have a lot of problems with them busting it, right?
No.
Like, what is your part of this play? Like, when it's over, is your heart pumping? Are you so locked in the moment that it doesn't hit you? What are you feeling right there?
Well, there's no doubt my heart was pumping after he scored, because I was so excited we took that lead. And, we had Wade Davis coming in to hopefully close it out. And he made it exciting, too, but he ended up getting it done. But anytime you have a play like that where you send a guy like that, you're happy as ever when, he does make it. And of course, you're disappointed and maybe pissed at yourself if you send him and he gets thrown out. But to me, that's just the way you got to be. And I think that's the way this team was, that, in 14 and 15, we lost in 14, but 15, both those years, I mean, we got thrown out sometimes at bases or trying to take that extra base, but that's just the way we played. We were a team that wanted to put pressure on the defense, you know. Yeah. And I mean, you look at against New York when Haas went, from third base, went to home, and that's pretty much his read on his own. But they knew, the first base, Duda had to rush to throw, and he threw it away. Yeah. Whereas if he'd have taken his time and thrown it, he probably would have thrown him out by 10 feet. But by putting that added pressure on and the defense not knowing exactly where he is and just knowing he's going, he rushes it and he throws it away, and that's what happens. Yeah. And like I said, sometimes you get burnt and sometimes you're all right. You make the play.
Yeah. I was probably going to ask you about this, but how long after that play did it take for the first person to reference you not getting Gordon thrown out by 1,000 feet the year before?
I still hear it to this day, but you know what, Sam? And that doesn't even bother me because I laugh about it, because anybody that has any knowledge in baseball, and I've talked to a lot of third base coaches that following year, and I even talked to Crawford, and guys like that. They bring it up, and they said, Jirsch, you made the right call. There's no way you could have. And I felt that way, and I felt that way all winter long. I never even thought about it, as being a big deal. But then next spring it comes up, and they're talking about it yet. Why, you should have sent Gordon and this and that. And that didn't even bother me. And you know what? We're all human. You make mistakes. I truly don't believe that was even close to being a mistake. I thought that was a no-brainer. I got to stop him here.
Yeah. It's just striking to me that 2 years in a row, the third base coach is such a big part of it, and you got both the decisions right. I don't think there's many, if any, people that would really disagree with that, but it's just wild. I remember, I think I've told you this, but I remember after Game 7, against the Giants in 14, just typing furiously and just looking at Andy and just saying, like, Gordon would have been out by a mile, right? And he was like, yeah, just going back to work. Okay, get that out of my head just to make sure somebody else saw this.
Yeah, and I always gave Selby about that. I said, Selby, why don't you take the pressure off me and just get a base hit there? Nobody would even thought of that. Holding him up.
Exactly.
It's funny in those situations too. Even though he would have been thrown, I think we would have ended the World Series in a rundown. He would have been out by that much. Yeah. Even if that throw was 5 to 10 feet off, he would have been able to catch it and come back and tag him, because Gordo, and I think that's where sometimes people get fooled, because Gordo's such a good left fielder that he doesn't run that good.
Right.
He's not real fast around those bases, and plus he ran all the way from home plate there. Not starting right away full speed, but then getting out there, then taking off, then all of a sudden something else happens, then he starts running hard again. By the time he got to third base, he was breathing pretty hard when I stopped him.
Yeah.
Do you think if he's running as hard as he can out of the box, do you think he could have scored?
Yeah. I mean, he would have made my call a lot harder.
Yeah.
You know? But, I mean, and it's amazing where you have plays like that, and, you know, people don't look at where he was when Crawford already secured the ball. You know, he was just touching third base. And I asked Crawford the next spring, or I told Crawford the next spring, I said, why don't you just roll that ball, like throw a pea right to home plate right there, which he would have done. And he smiles at me and he goes, Jirsch, I was waiting for you to send them.
Yeah.
That'll do it for today on Mellinger Minutes for Your Ears. Thanks to Savanna Smith for producing today's show. Hey, have I told you about the Sports Pass offer? That's a great deal. For a yearly rate of $30, you get all the coverage produced by the award-winning Kansas City Star sports staff, including everything behind the payroll, like Mellinger Minutes, the column, and the podcast. Here's another offer. Get the entire Kansas City Star product, sports, news, features, commentary and analysis, and the e-edition, all of it. The details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. Hey, and there's something else. Maybe you already subscribe and you want to help more. You can do that. Here's how. A tax-deductible contribution to the Star. For the past 2.5 months, no one has covered or told the story of the Kansas City area during the pandemic like the Star. And we're going to continue our role as the region's leading news source, and you can help. So to donate, go to givebutter.com, that's GIVEBUTTER, givebutter.com/Kansas City Star. All help is greatly appreciated, and whether it's the Sports Pass, the full subscription, or donation, you're helping us with our news coverage and helping deliver products like Mellinger Minutes and SportsBeat KC. Hey, thanks for listening, and have a great weekend.